Hey everybody, I hope y'all are having a good week. I hope you had a good week since the last time I talked to you. If you don't know already, my name is Ashley and I'm part of Pretty Peculiar. Here we're going to go ahead and recap last Sunday's Sunday school lesson. It's my intent to reach the heart. It's my intent that you hear something that the Spirit has to say to you and not just what Ashley has to say to you. It's also my intent that you walk away leaving a little bit lighter, a little less thirsty, and a little more quenched. So let's get into it. This week we're going to talk about 2 Samuel chapter 12 verses 1 through 9 and 13 through 15. The background scripture is 2 Samuel the 12th chapter in its entirety. So I'm going to go ahead and read this passage and be right back with you guys. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, "There were two men in a certain town, one rich, the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him." Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity." Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites." Then David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. But because by doing this you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die." After Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became ill. Thank you, God, for the reading of your word. I want to say this lesson really was eye-opening to me. This lesson was really like, what? David? King David? I know this. When they broke this story down, let's just say it's not sheep that we're talking about. Let's just say King David had a very great vantage point, and on this vantage point he caught a glimpse of Bathsheba, I believe it's pronounced, taking a ritual bath, performing a ritual bath is what the book says, and began lusting for her, and essentially impregnated her and tried to have her husband, basically tried to make it seem like it was her husband's baby when her husband Uriah had the wherewithal to not make that an option. So he's away at war. He didn't come home. Can't be his baby. David also makes sure that he doesn't come home from war. And Bathsheba becomes one of his wives. Although, when he became king, he inherited the last king's wives. Whether or not he made them his wives, it was uncommon based on the book for that to be something that's passed down. I thought it really interesting to have this story where this is one of those post happily ever after stories. This is one of those, God has blessed you, God has delivered you, and oh wait, you have a heart for God, but you know, sometimes you still succumb. And I think a couple of takeaways from this story. One is the saying where, I like the saying where you point a finger at somebody and three point back at you. These three right here. So when you're so focused on trying to point the blame, while Nathan was recalling this story because God had sent Nathan, Nathan already knew that the story was about David. We kind of knew the story was about David. The only person who didn't know the story about David was David. So when it was a rich man and a poor man, when it was sheep and not wives, and the story happened, you saw David was quick to the point. He was ready to kill him. He was ready to charge him. And the irony is, we do that too. The irony is, we are so good at pointing out shortcomings of other people. Like, extremely good at that. But the only issue is, we literally are bypassing ourselves to look at that other person. I think another takeaway in this story is the fact that God didn't take away David's legacy for this. This is not why I know King David. And I think that's a blessing. Although the son he had with Uriah's wife became ill and passed, his legacy continued. He still had Solomon, who was the lineage of Jesus. So God's plan still comes forth. And, you know, after being called out on it, so to speak, David does confess. And, you know, he is forgiven. And like I said, his legacy gets to live on. It's not without fault. It's not without consequence. But, you know, there was some, you know, I guess retribution, or there was a way to rectify this issue. And sometimes it does take consequences. I think the overarching story, though, is to have compassion, is to show some grace, is to identify that at some point we're all connected, and the point that we are all human, we all err, and we all fall short, and we all need grace and mercy. I think those are the things that we should stay above board on. The conclusion of the story is, well, before the end of the conclusion, the Sunday school lesson, excuse me, my words is getting all jumbled up, references Matthew chapter 7, verse 5. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Mind your business. That's kind of what it means. If your eyes are set on God and the things that are above, and you're following his lead and you're following his heart and you're seeking relationship, chances are you don't have time to so harshly judge the next person. And when you do find yourself having time and pointing that finger, remember those bottom three that's down here pointing back to you. And not to say that we can't hold each other accountable at times, but like I said, if God can provide grace and mercy, if his word can remain true, then we can provide a little bit more love to spread around. Let me make sure I have all of my notes here. I love how today's lessons, although centered in accountability, strongly shows God's grace and mercy, and even how his favorites slip. Even that person that you think has it all together has reason to come back, and everything is used for God's glory. So even those slip-ups and setbacks are a part of the story. There are no mistakes. Another note we have is, remember we all do and all need to help ourselves stand up and see straight in order to ensure our perspectives are intact. And I think that has to do with the speck in the eye. So I think that I'm coming to a conclusion today. I wish I could read you guys the whole story of it, because it was a whole reality show. When they broke down this conversation between Nathan and David, I really almost forgot I was reading the Bible. And before I could get too deep into I can't believe David, I remember that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is how God can use you anyway. The point of the story is, although we identify with Nathan, we always, well, not always, but we oftentimes more closely identify with David, where we're able to see what's going on wrong over there, but have a hard time with what's right in front of us and the things that we can change. And shout out to MJ, that man in the mirror. Let's start there. So until next Thursday, I hope you have a great week, a blessed week. I love you. I appreciate you watching my videos. I appreciate every single comment, share, like, subscribe, all of the above. More will be to come, but it's my intent to be consistent with this, so that, you know, God will show me what else is around the corner. So be patient with me. I'll be patient with you, and have a great, great day. Bye. Bye for real.